Y'all, this is a really special occasion. Trying to think of a good way to begin because this is special. I think all of you know Alishia very well. We were worshiping this morning. I want to start this way, I guess. We come in here early and we worship and we pray, and there was a song that was playing called Agnus Dei. Maybe you're familiar with it. And it's a clip from the Passion Conference from 2023, right after the outpouring. And they go into this long session of praising the Lord, and then one of the singers stops and reads a passage from Scripture where a bright light shines, and the prophet falls on their face in fear, and Jesus walks up and touches him on the shoulder and says, "Do not be afraid, for I was dead, but now I'm alive." And as I heard that, it struck me like why what we're doing here today really matters is because Jesus said that about being dead and then being risen from the dead. But the testimony of Christians is that we were dead and now we are alive. And when I think about why what we're doing here this morning matters at all, it matters because I think there are so many people who don't know that there's a way to be alive on the outside but dead on the inside. And there's also a way to become alive on the inside through Jesus. When I met Alishia, there's nothing off the table, right?
You can say whatever, it's okay.
So I think it was the year I was headmastering, I think it was 2020. Yeah. 22, maybe 21 to 22. Mm-hmm. It was a hard year. And I remember, there's Ellie and Dakota. Dakota's in the back right now. But I remember Alishia every morning dropping them off for school. And you would come in your little gray car. Wasn't it gray? Gray car?
Black.
It's black. That's what I meant. It's black. Little black car. That's what I remember. I probably have the other facts wrong too. And Alishia, you would have your sweatshirt on with your hood over. Mm-hmm. And it was real quick. It was real quick to get the kids out. And that was a season where I thought, man, I'm really worried about this young lady. And now here we are today. Okay, so that's my part. So I'm going to ask, I told Alishia I'm going to do this like an interview. I'm going to ask some questions. We might even see how far this goes, like where it goes. But people who know you today may not fully appreciate who you are today because they didn't know who you were. So would you share a bit about your background and what your life was like previously? Let's go back before addiction.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was...
Hold that mic up a little closer. There
okay. I don't want to be too loud. I was raised by a single mom who had her own struggles with addiction, and now I see though that she did the best that she could for us. And my dad was in and out. We did see him and stuff, but not all the time. And then I went to community college for a little bit, and then when I was it wasn't like we weren't like rich and had all these great things, but like my mom loved me, I knew that. But I had a lot of freedom when I was young. I was allowed to do as I pleased as long as I let her know. So I was allowed to come and go as I pleased, even at a very young age. So I drank very early. I think I was like 14 the first time that I got drunk. And then I had like small experiences with like certain like pills or marijuana very young. But it was pretty normal for us. I mean, my mom was very open about, like, she didn't really hide her drug use and stuff like that, and there was just a lot of in and out with that. She was an alcoholic for a little bit, so that was probably the toughest time. That's when I really noticed that like she had a problem. I didn't stay home very much, so then when I was like 16 turning 17, I graduated high school, and she was like, I'll pay for your first 6 months and you just move on out. So I moved into this little trailer out in Midland. I don't even know if anybody knows where that's at, but out in Midland, North Carolina, and I lived there by myself for a little while, and I like partied and stuff like a normal 19 or 20-year-old. I think like I thought was normal anyway.
Like a normal 19-year-old.
Yeah, I just kind of did what I wanted though, because I was like, so from those ages, I did what I wanted, and I didn't really. I mean, I worked and I went to school, but like I didn't really have any major responsibility, so I just pretty much did whatever I wanted. And then when I was probably 20 or 21, I think I was 20, I met someone that already dabbled in like opiates and stuff, and so then it kind of I just kind of did it at first, like I would just do pills or whatever, or take pills and opiates and stuff like that, or Xanax or whatever, when they did or when it was around me, because like it didn't seem like a big deal. But I had always told myself before this, like I would never be a drug addict and I would never be like my mom. Like I despised her so much for, like I just thought like she was a horrible mom, and like how could she do this to her kids, and like how could she be this way? I'll never be that way. And I always said that. I always said I would never be like my mom. And then before you know it, you become the exact same thing, because it's normal. It was just normal to me. Like the way my dad treated my mom was, I thought, how every marriage was. And then like her being on drugs and him being on drugs and all that other stuff, and like the partying and all that, I thought that was like normal as well. So I think that's what led me into thinking it was okay to do the drugs, because everybody around me did it. So, and all my mom's friends and most of our family that we hung out with often did it as well. So then when I was about, I think I was 19 or 20, I really started like dabbling with opiates, but I really wasn't a full-blown addict yet. I would just do it on like the weekends or when I was around him, which I'm not placing any blame on him. I was an adult at that point, and I don't place any blame on him at all. So then after that, he always had drugs, so I still really didn't feel like an addict, because.
Who's the him we're talking about?
It was an ex.
Oh, an ex.
An ex,
okay.
yeah. It was an ex. But like I said, I do not blame him in any way. I don't have any kind of ill will towards him. He's doing great in his life right now, and he's sober. So, but I started using the pills more frequently, and then before you know it, you realize like you're sick without them, and then you still don't really feel like an addict yet, especially when it's at your disposal. So when you just have the pills all the time, like if they're prescribed by a doctor, like you don't feel like an addict yet. That feeling comes when you are like I feel like it takes a little bit longer to get to that feeling of like I'm an addict and all the shame that comes with it. It's not like that at first, because it's just there and you just do it. It's just, I didn't feel that way at first.
So at what point did you realize like, okay, here it is, this was a party thing then, but now I've really got a problem?
The first time that I was like sick from not having it.
Yeah.
Because you'll do whatever. Like you're just like, I just got to get it, because you're physically, with opiates, you're physically ill. So like your body hurts everywhere and you can't sleep, you can't eat, and you're just like yawning constantly. And there's just so much. It's just like a mental and physical load that you feel like you can't handle. So you're just like chasing the good feeling again. And then it doesn't stop there. Now that you feel better, you also want to feel high again. It was just a good feeling. Like I hate to say that, but that's what attracted me to it. It made you just feel good, and you just felt numb literally, and you didn't have to think about anything. So like to me, it was like, what's the big deal? At that point I didn't have kids either, so really I didn't feel any attachment to anything or any reason why I shouldn't do it. It didn't feel like a big deal. My parents didn't make it a big deal. It was normal, it was part of our life. So I didn't make it a big deal either. I still knew at this point I didn't want to be like my mom though. Like I can remember now I realize what was active addiction, and still feeling like I'm not her though. Like I still wouldn't do the things that she's done. I just had so much resentment towards her. And yeah, I ended up.
So is that at that point where you go, now I realize, is that like still we're in like the mid-20s, early 20s at this point?
My early 20s, I started to realize like I had a problem. Yeah. And then a lot of my money was going to that problem now, because financially Like, once you're that deep in it, and especially when you're doing it with someone else, it's a lot easier to get into it because, I don't know, you're doing it together. And you think like that's built on love and all this other crazy stuff. So you're just like in it with them. And so then like you're sick together and then you feel better together. And so you just kind of, it's a weird thing. Like you would think that you would want to be alone and not let anybody see it, but misery does truly love company. So like, I don't know, it's weird.
Would you be willing to share, like, what were some of, like, the lowest points? Like, do you have any, like, stories where you go, here's what it's like to be at the low?
My lowest points were, there were times in my addiction where I was on maintenance medication. Like, maintenance medication is, like, methadone, Suboxone, Subutex. So I wasn't actively, like, using pills anymore or like doing cocaine or anything like crazy like that. I was just taking the maintenance medicine, and that is all I was doing. And I would go a few years and be really good and strong in that, and then have like a 3 or 4 day period where I ran into somebody and they had like some cocaine or something, and I just did it. Like I would just do it until it was gone, or until my money was gone, or till whatever, and then I'd fall off for a little bit again. But for the most part, my maintenance medication kept me pretty solid for years at a time in between these bad things. But one of the bad times was I ran into someone that I hadn't seen in a very long time, and he was a friend of mine's brother. So like I knew him, but I didn't really know him. And we ended up hanging out and doing drugs together, and then I found out that I was pregnant with Dakota at that point. So this wasn't somebody that I trusted, loved, or anything. It was just me not really caring and just doing whatever because I was on drugs. So I didn't care about a lot of things. And so one of my low points was that, because I was like, well, I have to have an abortion because, sorry, this makes me really emotional.
It's okay.
I have to have an abortion because I already have one kid. I'm on drugs. Like, I don't want to do this to like another baby. It was deeper than just like, I knew like having an abortion and like killing a baby was wrong. I know it was wrong, but in my head, I felt justified by it because of like how horrible his life would be. So like, how is that fair either? And like his dad was a drug addict and not a great person at all, and or his real dad, and we weren't together or anything. It was just like a, for lack of a better term, like one night stand. And so I was like, I'm gonna have an abortion. I'm gonna have an abortion. So sorry, it's really hard because of how special Dakota is to me, that I was going to sacrifice him for myself. So that was a really low point, but I didn't have the money, so I was like making arrangements with his biological dad, like, okay, let's meet at this abortion clinic and you bring this much money, I only have this much. And so we made those arrangements more than once. The first time I didn't make it in time and they wouldn't see me, so then we rescheduled the appointment. The second time he never came with his half of the money, and I didn't have enough money, so they wouldn't see me. And then the third time, I don't know what happened. Something happened. Either I broke down in traffic or I got a flat tire or something happened. But like by the time I finally did go, it was just too late. I was too far along. But like now I know that like that was, it was like divine intervention, because Dakota is so special. I'm so glad that didn't happen. But that was a really low point for me, because I was just ashamed and embarrassed, so I didn't tell my family I was pregnant for a really long time. And they kept asking me, like, what's wrong with you? You're sick all the time. Because I had a really rough pregnancy. And, like, your stomach does look like it's poking out. And I was like, oh, it's my gallbladder. Like, my gallbladder's not good. And I just made stuff up. And Dakota was born in February, and in December, In December, I finally told my family, and it was just, it was hard. So at that point, I still didn't know if I was going to keep him or not. I was just like, I just can't do it. Like, I can't have an abortion, but like, I also can't keep him. I'm in no position in my life to take care of him. I can barely take care of my daughter. So I went to a doctor, an OBGYN for my first appointment in December. So at this point, I was like 7 months pregnant, maybe a little bit further. And she was like, just take a minute and think about it. Like, she was just so kind, but she was retiring that week. This was like I was one of her last appointments, and she was like retiring that week. But she was like, I was very distraught, and I was like, I have to give him up for adoption. I just don't think I can keep him. I can't give him a good life. And she was like, it's okay. Like, have faith. It's all right. Just don't make any like irrational decisions based off of how upset you are right now. And she was like, I was like, well, I don't even have anything. Like, I don't have money, and I don't have anything for him at my house. And she literally was like, this is my phone number and this is my address. And at 5 o'clock today, I want you to like come and meet me at my house. We're moving, and we have a bunch of stuff. So she gave me money. She gave me a crib. She gave me like a bathing set. She gave me clothes. She gave me diapers. She gave me bottles. She gave me everything. And that was the reason I kept him, because I was like, I didn't, at that point in my life, I see now that was like God was helping me. But at that point in my life, I was like, okay, well, I have everything I need now. And she was a really nice lady. So I decided that I would keep Dakota, which was like one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. But so that was a really low point for me, because obviously that's hard to imagine that I was about to do something like that to my son, who I love so dearly now. And then a couple other low points where it got really bad was in 2021, because once you are an addict, I think you find like you make excuses for a lot. Like, well, okay, well, I had a bad day, so I'm going to get high or get drunk or whatever. But in 2020, I think it was 2020, I lost my grandmother right at like when COVID got really bad in the United States, and I didn't get to see her before. And she helped raise me, so it was just really hard. It was just really hard. My mom, my dad had already passed away from pancreatic cancer, and then my grandmother passed away sick in the hospital, and I didn't get to say goodbye to her. So then it was like that's when I started drinking heavily. Like, I was drinking every day, but not a super lot, but I was also taking maintenance medication, which was mixing with the alcohol, which was making me much more intoxicated. And then I'm sorry.
No, you're doing great.
Then my grandmother, and my uncle were murdered by a family member. And so then it's like I started really heavily drinking, because I was like, no one stays alive around us. Like, I just feel like our family's had a lot of death. We've experienced a lot of loss and stuff, and I think it was just like the way to deal with it at that time is what I thought. I thought, like, well, who really cares? Like, all this just keeps happening. Like, there's never really good moments anymore. So I didn't really care. I just did what I wanted to do with disregard. I did not take into account a lot of people that I've hurt along the way, because it just wasn't my first priority. My first priority, I would like to think, was my kids, but it wasn't. It was not being sick and feeling good, which I got from those substances that I was abusing. And then in around the beginning of 2022, like middle, I got really sick from all the alcohol, and because at that point I was drinking like a fifth a day. I was drinking a lot of like hard liquor. So I was.
For our non-drinkers, that's a lot.
That's a lot. So I was drinking like a whole bottle of liquor, and then needing more as well. And during this time, I met Andrew in 2019, and we started like really dating in 2020. And so when he met me, I was on maintenance medication, and I was honest about that. But he never he's never been an addict, so I don't think he truly like understood it. I think he just accepted it because he liked me, and
Good job.
but he had, during the time after my grandma and my uncle were murdered, my mom also had, my mom had also gone to prison for drugs. She was like pulled over with drugs in the car. And so it just kind of felt empty and alone, and like I would use that a lot in my head, like, well, I don't have anybody, like I don't have any family to call. I mean, I have my cousin who has been like my biggest supporter since day one. But it, like, I could call her anytime and she would come for sure, but I didn't have any like family ties or like a grandma or grandpa I could call. Everyone was either dead or gone, and my brother was also a drug addict, and he was just out on the streets doing whatever. So I just felt alone. And so I drank a lot. I drank a lot to just not care about it. I didn't care about it, and like I would use cocaine in between that. Not every day, but like weekly. Because I was an alcoholic, so I was so drunk all the time. To sober myself up, I thought, okay, well, this isn't a big deal, because like I'm just sobering myself up or whatever. But anyways, that's when it was at its worst, like 2021, the end of 2020 to the end of 2022. And during that time, I was drinking a lot, like I said, like a fifth a day. And there's a lot of shame with like when I think back of all I don't remember, of all I missed, of all I didn't care about. But Andrew, who is been the best, literally the best, he literally took during that time. He loved me through failing, like through my failure and through any success I had, and he gave me room to be a failure and to come back up from it, and his judgment was like so little. He was just, if it wouldn't have been for him, I don't know what I would have done. I probably would have like lost custody of my kids, because he literally made sure that they ate, they did their homework, he took them to school every day, and I was just at home doing nothing but like getting drunk, So at this point I was still on maintenance medication. Thank you. I was still on maintenance medication as well, but I wasn't using any other opiates. I was just had the maintenance medication and drinking a lot of alcohol, and then doing cocaine here and there. And I got really sick, like in the middle of 2022. I went to the hospital because I was throwing up everything I put on my stomach. Like I would take a shot and throw up immediately. Eat a piece of bread, throw up immediately. Drink a cup of water, throw up immediately. I hadn't held anything down in like 5 days. So he finally took me to the hospital, and at that point they were like, your heart rate's off, but I think it's because you're severely dehydrated. And then they like checked all my blood work and all that, and like she was like, the doctor was talking to me, he was like, I'm just going to be, honest with you, your liver does not look good. Because I was having these weird bouts of pain through my body, and my ankles were swollen, like you could see all my blood vessels. I looked awful. I was almost 200 pounds, and my face and my skin was very, very like mauled up, because I would just pick at myself, and my skin was just like disgusting. But so I went to the hospital. They asked me about my drinking. I was honest, and she was like, you gotta stop, because you're gonna kill yourself. Like your liver is inflamed, and you have the beginning of like fatty liver disease. Like you gotta get it together. And so at that point I knew it was like serious, but I still think I went home and drank after that. And then I continued to be sick, and I was still taking my maintenance medication. At this point I was not really doing cocaine because I didn't have any money left. I hadn't worked in 4 months. I had quit my job and just not found anywhere else to work. And that is what led me to the day on my steps where
So that's where you're going.
Yeah, that's why I said that, because I was like...
Let me put this question, because with all of that, you're different.
Yeah.
So how did that happen?
Okay.
Tell the story.
So I had said it many times across this 10-year span of addiction. I had said it many times, I'm sure, like, why am I even here? Like, if you love me and you're so powerful, why can't you just take this away from me? Why do I have to suffer? Like, this doesn't make sense. I would question God because I didn't know any better, I guess. I mean, I did, but I would say, like, just go ahead and take me away from here. Like, if, I can't change. I've tried. Like, my kids deserve better. There would be moments where I was never, like, suicidal, where I would have actually done something, but, like, I would just say the words. And then that day, though, there was just something, I guess, I'd been up all night long. This was after I got released from the hospital. I had went back a second time. Same thing. They kept me for, like, 6 hours, gave me fluids, sent me back home. And so that night, I got home from the hospital, and I did not sleep at all. And I went out to my steps. I have, like, brick steps right outside my doorway under, like, a carport. And I went out to my brick steps and sat down. And this time, I did cry out to God. But, like, I felt it in my heart this time. Like, it wasn't me just saying the words of, like, I'm aggravated, I'm sick, and I want you to help me, so I'm just going to be like, oh, why didn't you just take me away? Like, those were words I said before, but this time I felt it. I was, like, in my heart, I was like, I just asked God, if he could just, like, either take me away or take me away. Like, I said it twice, but I meant different things. I was like, I'm no good to anyone. I'm no good to anyone. Like, I've ruined my body. I've ruined my life. I'm going to ruin my kids' lives. Like, they'd be better off with, like, my cousin and Andrew raising them. So I just said, like, God, and I really felt it. I was like, in my heart, I was like, just take me away. Because in that moment, I expected to be, like, struck by lightning because I was asking for it truly. Like, I wanted it. This time was different. I wanted it. And at that moment, I'm sorry. At that moment, okay, so to preface, because of all the drug addiction and drug use and abusing alcohol, I have, like, a bleeding behind my eyes, so I see, sometimes out of my peripheral, I see, like, weird stuff, or I have, like, floaters, so when I look side to side, I can see stuff moving. It's like, anyway, I haven't had good vision since probably 2021. That was when my drinking was the hardest. I don't know if that had something to do with it, but I started having really bad vision, especially at night, and my depth perception's always really off. So if I'm, like, looking out into the distance to see something, I cannot see it. It looks like a tree would look like a stalk of broccoli. Like, it would just look like a general image. I couldn't see anything in particular. So this day, I was on the steps, and I had called out to God to just take me away or do something with me because I'm done. And I just can't live like this anymore. And all of a sudden, my eyes, like, filled with tears, but I wasn't crying, I wasn't sad. But there was, like, so much tears. It was, like, just streaming down my face, not in, like, just one, not like when you cry and, like, one tear falls out. It was, like, so much. It was, like, flooding my eyes. But I wasn't crying, and I just, like, I felt okay, but I looked out into the distance. I'm sorry. I looked out into the distance from that brick step, and all I could see were, like, the colors of the birds and, like, every single tree limb, like, I mean, trees that were, like, way off in the distance. I could see, like, each branch, each leaf off of everything, and, like, my eyes were just flooding with water. But I'm not crying still, and like, I just felt an embrace that I'd never felt before, and before I could even, like, think about what was happening, like, my lips were already saying, like, thank you. I was just, like, saying, thank you for allowing me to see this, because still in my head, just for a second, I was like, maybe I am about to die, and maybe he's just letting me see, like, something beautiful before I die. But it was like a warmth and a heaviness, but I can't explain it with words. But I could see everything, and my vision was so clear, and everything was just so beautiful. Everything was so beautiful. Like every tree, I could literally see, like a bird was flying by my power lines, and I could see like each feather. It was just insane. Like I had never experienced anything like that before. And so from that day forward, I never took my maintenance medication again, and I stopped drinking. And like I just knew it was like God. I mean, I wasn't perfect after that by any means. I still messed up, but like it was just like this. It was just like this, like when you're sad or scared and like your dad hugs you, that kind of hug. And I just felt it. And everything was just beautiful for like a few minutes. And I just kept I just kept saying like, thank you. Like, thank you over and over and over again. It wasn't like a conscious thought I was having to thank him for something he had done. It was just happening. And then eventually my eyes stopped watering, and then I started crying because like, you just know like there's nothing else that could have been except God's love. And so it was like the most beautiful experience I've ever had.
Can we stop for just a moment and give the Lord praise? Yeah.
So yeah, and then I stopped taking. And now I wasn't perfect after that, but it was crazy to me because I wasn't like it was an instantaneous feeling that lasted, and I knew it was from God, and I felt reassured for some reason. But obviously, I still have flesh attached, and it still took it was probably a good year after that I still struggled. I didn't fall back into addiction, but slowly things around me changed. The world, I could see the world for what it was and not like this fun thing that wasn't a big deal. And like I took things way more serious with like the spiritual realm of things because I was like seeing things.
Kelda, can I share? So the first time Alishia told me the story was right after 2023. Mm-hmm. So y'all remember what those of you who know me for that time, what I was going through. And I remember, maybe it was last year when you shared it, but Alishia was like, well, let me tell you what happened, but you're not going to believe it. And I was like, probably I will.
Because everyone I told, like I was weird about telling people still. Like I would just be like, hey, like, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I worked at Texas Roadhouse at this point again. Like I had got my job back there after being off for 4 months. And there was people there that I still knew who like knew me the 4 months before when I had quit. And so I was like, hey, listen, this thing happened to me. And like I wasn't like I wasn't like saying God came in and I wasn't giving God glory for it because I was like still processing it a little bit. I did feel like it was the Lord, but like when I talked to people about it, I felt not ashamed, but like I don't want to weird someone out. So I would tell them like, hey, like this thing happened to me, and like all of a sudden like I was free from drugs and drinking, and they would be like, girl, that's weird, don't tell people that story. So then I felt really weird about it, and I was like, maybe I'm hyping myself up, like so then I started questioning things. Unfortunately, I questioned, like I had a friend who practices Islam, like she's a Muslim. And she was like bringing to me the idea that Jesus was just a prophet and not. So I was like questioning God about it. I was like, am I believing the right way? Like I started questioning everything. And then all of a sudden, like I kept hearing like Jeremiah. I kept seeing Jeremiah, like a name I'd never even really thought of. So I read Jeremiah or most of it. And then there's like a section in there that says like, I'll raise up a righteous branch, and like that little section. And I was like, okay, Jesus is real because this all leads to him. And then that's when I really started diving into the Bible, because I was like, all right, I need to read this and see what it's about. But after that, I spent that from 2022, when that happened in October of 2022, to probably October of 2023, I was opened up to so many new truths. It was just like everything just comes flooding in. Like you look at situations different. You look at people different. I had a lot more grace with people, but I think probably what really turned it around for me was like the summer of 2023, I apologized. I'm sorry. I just apologized to my mom, because she's still in prison, but she'd call me one day and I was like, hey, I just want to let you know, like, I'm really sorry for everything, for the way I spoke to you. Even though I felt like she hadn't done a great job, like, I was still really mean to her. I was really cold-hearted towards her while I was in addiction. And I was like, I'm really sorry, and I love you, and I'm sorry for the way I've ever treated you. Like, you were just a human being trying to figure out life the same way, and you made mistakes, and I held that over your head, and I just want you to know, like, I truly love you. And that broke open so much for me. Like, I think I needed that. Because we cried together, and she apologized for things that she had put me through that weren't obviously right either. But I wasn't looking for her to apologize. I was just looking for her forgiveness because I was so cruel to her. And after that, my relationships got really much better, because then I started to realize, like, the same things I realized about my mom. Like, she was fighting her flesh the same way I was. She loved me, and she was doing the best that she could, and I shouldn't have been so hard on her. I do regret it. That is one thing I do regret, is how mean I was to my mom. Because I felt like, we did drugs together. We did drugs together. So I was like, who does that with their kid? Like, who does that? Like, I would say things like that to myself, but I was doing it in front of my kids, not openly in front of them, but like I was high around them. So I really wasn't any better. But then, okay, so I apologized to my mom. That really helped. I started reading the Bible more, but I was still struggling with like worldly things. And I worked in a place that is a little bit worldly. It's just hard because like other people are doing things. So like I did go out and like have drinks with friends and stuff. I never went crazy like back into it, but there was a few times that I had a couple drinks. I can admit that. And I would get in those situations and immediately be like, oh my gosh, like, this isn't right, this isn't okay, or see how somebody was acting or talking, and I would be like weirded out by it. Like, I don't know, there was just so much truth that was exposed to me so fast.
Like there's a new awareness of
everything. And even myself, like I became very self-aware of like how I talk to people and the jokes I make sometimes. Like I really am just kidding, but I used to be like harsh a little bit, and a lot of it was the way I talk to my kids. We've never been like, I don't feel like I haven't been like mean and like cuss them out or anything like that, but I was more aggressive with them, I'm sure. So I started to be kinder to my kids and kinder to, I seen like when people are struggling or a homeless person is like begging, I used to be like, okay, well, you gotta work the same as me. Like I would make comments like that to myself. And then I realized like I don't have to give them anything, but also I don't have to like degrade them in the process. You don't have to give them anything. Just don't give them anything. You don't have to degrade them. They still deserve basic human respect, like no matter what they're going through. I think that is what sometimes I've ran into. I'm not saying anybody here that I've personally dealt with, but in this church, but there are people I have had run-ins with that are very kind and considerate and all that until it comes to somebody that doesn't look like them, like that is dirty or begging or a drug addict. And I think like as Christians, we have to remember like the kind, like the grace and the kindness that Jesus shows us in the dark places, because no, we don't see each other's dark places, but Jesus does, and he still gives you grace and he still gives you kindness. So like imagine your deepest, darkest thing that you've been forgiven for, but you're wearing it on the outside like a drug addict wears it on the outside, so everybody has something.
So what would for like everybody here today and like people who will watch this online, whether it's an addiction or not an addiction, people are wanting freedom. Maybe something they don't know they need freedom from, maybe something like in your situation where they're very aware what would you tell them?
Well, I mean, the only way to obtain that freedom is through Jesus Christ, because you think there's other ways, like, but relinquishing control of that and truly meaning it in your heart, like truly relinquishing control, was like the best decision I ever made. And so I think that is where that's hard for an addict, because you have to be in control, because you have to know where your next fix is coming from, or you kind of enjoy it too. So it's like, but any high I've ever felt in my life doesn't come close to the love like I felt that day on the steps.
Yeah, go ahead.
It was like
do you think,
magnified by a million. It was just different.
Do you think that's what a lot of people feel like? Maybe some of the drugs is, I feel lonely. I feel like I missed out on love, right? Like all this happened and I missed that segment of life. And so the feeling is sometimes like there's nowhere else to get it now. That's just been gone. And then you discover it wasn't gone. It's not.
Yeah, it's not. And
it's not
well, and I think like a lot of people who, not everyone, I know there are people who have great families, they come from great communities, and they still end up a drug addict. But a lot of the people that I know, many of them have lost their lives or ended up in prison. They come from places that maybe it was a single parent home, and they were left alone a lot, and they didn't get love in the sense that I now know it because I have felt it from God. But they come from situations and trauma that, like, someone who's never been through it could just not understand. You just can't understand. And that's okay, but we have to be compassionate and kind and have grace for those situations, and be considerate that, hey, like, this person talks and I don't like the way they talk, or I don't like the way they do this, or they get on my nerves, so I'm not going to be around them. But like, you don't know what they went through that got them to this point. It could have been something great, it could have been something very horrible. So let's just be kind, even when it's not in our best interest to do so. And anytime that we get in a situation, like even driving down the road in traffic, if someone cuts me off and I'm upset, I'm immediately like, God, forgive me, because they could have a kid in the back seat with a busted up head and they're trying to get him to the hospital. Like, did it affect me that much where I needed to, like, say a curse word or get that upset? Definitely not. I think becoming more self-aware, more aware of yourself, that, like, hey, it's like a Bible verse where it's like, he who is without sin cast the first stone. And I say that to myself all the time. I'm like, because you are not righteous and perfect and great. Only Jesus is. So who am I to judge someone else's life or what they're going through and say mean things about them? So I think as Christians, we have to work harder to, and I don't mean this in like a disrespectful way, but we have to work harder to be inclusive with our love. You can't say like you don't have to support what they do and go out. I'm not saying you have to get out of your car and give them your last $20, but you can stop and say a quick prayer at the stoplight. You know, like, love them the way that Jesus loves you, because that prayer could change things for them. You don't know. There's just like a whole community of people that don't get prayed for a lot. Yeah. And they're just kind of like lost and forgotten. But a lot of them have had like significant trauma, and I think that's what leads it there. And again, I don't know anyone of all my years of drug use that was like, you know what, I'm going to be a drug addict. I'm gonna go do some those are my goals for this year. It starts off like partying, or, you know, a lot of it's unsupervised fun because we're young and our parents didn't care what we did. So, because, you know, I think that's one of the biggest things, is like unsupervised. Children who are left unsupervised at those tender ages. But sometimes, you know, that's unavoidable. You have a parent that works 2 jobs, or, you know, a single mom, or someone who's still struggling themselves. But a lot of times I think it just starts with you start off partying and then you use it here and there, and then before you know it, you're physically dependent, and then before you know it, you're jobless, and then you're homeless, and then you barely have enough food every day to eat, and that it's like it happens within like the span of a year. It goes so quick. It's like a domino effect, and no one ever plans for that. Like I didn't use opiates and cocaine like one day I'm gonna have kids and I'm gonna become even worse than this, and like no one does that. So sometimes I think people say like, well, they do it to themselves, they did it to themselves. It doesn't, like, that's not coming from a place of love. You can just not say that comment out loud and just say, this is what they're going through right now in this moment. I don't know what got them here, but I'm going to pray with them through it. I think that is what addicts need the most, because my cousin, Felicia, who's here today, she is really the only family that I have that I'm close with in the state of North Carolina, her and her dad. But my mom's obviously, I can't just like go be with her, but and she's never stopped praying for me and writing about me in her prayer journal. And I just know, like, without that, like the power of prayer, like I am evidence of the power of prayer. Because she prayed for this day for so long, and it's here. So I'm just really lucky to have her. Amen. Really blessed to have her. But so yeah, and then I quit working at the restaurant and started working here, and things have gotten much better because I'm in like less of a toxic place. And then I started working with Miss Lund, who literally encourages me every day that I'm enough and that I've made it far, and that I should be proud of myself. So my mom doesn't really say stuff like that, so I love Miss Lund so much because she says it to me all the time when I'm like hard on myself. She's like, girl, stop. Like, God has you. You did it. Like, you made it out. Like, look at you now. Like, she's so encouraging. And yeah, I've just really found a lot of people that have encouraged me. And Andrew has been by my side through everything. My cousin has been through my side through everything. And Miss Diney, like, she was one of the first people to be like, people love you. Like, you need to calm down. So, because I was like, well, I don't want to bother anybody about everything. And she was like, why not? Like, bother people. Who cares? Yeah. Like, so I just met a lot of great, I've met a lot of great people this year. This year's been a big year of change for me. So, it's been a crazy journey, but like I would go through it all over again knowing that like that one moment on the steps, that like one little bubble of glory that I got to feel, it was worth it. Like all of the pain was worth it, because that feeling is like, I can't, besides the word beautiful, like that, it just was, and after that, everything I seen was beautiful. Like for that whole year, I would just call her and be like, have you looked at the trees today? They're so pretty today. And she's like, no, I never really look at the trees. And I'm like, go outside and look at the trees, dude. And I would call her and be like, hey, go outside and look at the clouds. And so she would be like, okay. So, but she always tells me, she's like, I appreciate that, because I don't take the time to stop and look at that kind of stuff. I haven't until then, but everything just became so much more beautiful to me. And I just started to realize how precious life was. And yeah, it was literally, the birth of my children and loving my kids has been a great honor, but like feeling love from God is just different. Yeah. It's just different.
People tend to think, like, when we talk about the love of God, that we mean like something up here, you know what I mean? Like we just believe he loves me. But when you encounter him, like when you run into him, it's like everything changes. And then it's like finally you see, right? Like sometimes like the tears. I remember my mentor used to say, he said, sometimes people don't understand the tears. They think, oh, there's sadness. And it's like, oh, no, you're not understanding these tears. Even now when I think about the feeling, like, or if I see someone else experiencing joy in the Lord, it makes me like immediate, or if I even think about someone who hasn't got to feel it, I'm just like, man, I really wish you could, because like it's just,
it's overwhelming. It is so beautiful, and it just makes you feel beautiful, but not like in a worldly beautiful. Like it's a different kind of beauty. It's not like what we think of as beautiful in this world. It's different. It's a different beauty. I can't explain it any other way than that. But yeah, it's been a crazy ride.
Crazy ride? It's been a crazy ride. So here's what I think I want to do. So I know we're pushing time, but we're okay. We got nowhere to be, unless you do. But you can cancel it. So here's what I want to do. We're going to do communion and a time of prayer. And I think, Alishia, you brought up some things that I kind of want to focus our communion and prayer time on. And after you partake of communion, if you need to walk out, please feel free. Just please let this place stay sacred for as long as we're in here. But before I say what that is, I want to say, because I've watched, Alishia, as I watch your transformation, even times like, if you saw the little thing we put up on Facebook, the quote by Alishia, that was not planned. I just asked, hey, is there anything you don't want to talk about? And that's what she responded to me with. That was her knee-jerk response on a text message. And one of the things I see in you is the Lord really using you and your voice in a special way, because the way you worded that, and I've seen that happen in you in multiple areas, and I think He's giving you voice in a special way to not only share your story, but to share the gospel. And I just want to declare that over you, because I do think the Lord has special things for you in that way. You have such a story, and sometimes the Lord, like when the Lord saved Saul in the way He did, not everybody got to see a light like Saul did, but it was such a testimony for people to be able to connect with. And I'm so grateful for that in your life. So as we're going to transition, and I'm going to let you all, if you want to come and say thanks to Alishia, whatever you want to do as I get things ready for communion. As we do communion, communion represents God come to earth. Okay, that's literally what it is. The communion is in natural common elements that we consume that represent that God the Son came, took upon flesh, so that the way the old church fathers used to say it is, we need to look up and see God, but we can't because our eyes are focused on the things of this world. And so God became flesh so that in us He might be able to get in front of our gaze, and in seeing His flesh we might be able to look upwards and see God. And so as we partake, it's a representation that He has had mercy on us, that we have been unworthy, sinful, and wicked, but He forgave us. And He didn't wait to do it when we were on His side. It was while we were still enemies that He came to do it. That's communion. That's what we do. But as you take your time of prayer, here's what I want to encourage you. Alishia mentioned that there's a lot of people out there who don't get the prayers of the saints. We just look past them and we don't even see them. So as you partake of communion today, I want you to realize what God has done for you. And then I want you to pray for those that nobody else has seen. The addicts, the homeless. And that's how our prayer time is going to be. And if you need Jesus today, it would also be a good time to come up and receive prayer for that. You just got to let us know. Okay? You just give me that look and be like that. And I'll be like, all right, let's do this. And we'll do it. And can y'all give her some love? And yeah, thank you. today. It would also be a good time to come up and receive prayer for that. You just got to let us know. Okay? You just give me that look and be like that, and I'll be like, all right, let's do this, and we'll do it. And can y'all give her some love? And